Hey everybody, it's Avi Tenenbaum with TFRP, Torah for Real People, and I have something very special to show you today. So if you're not familiar with what a Gemara looks like, in the beginning of every Gemara, you have a page that looks like this. It is called a sharblat, and it is a gate. There's almost always in every Gemara a picture of a gate, pillars, sometimes there are lions, but it's this artsy picture in the beginning of every Gemara pretty much that you'll ever find in every edition of the Talmud today. I'm going to show you now something very special. If you look at this Gemara, it's a picture of the concentration camps, and this is a special edition of Shas that was printed in the DP camps in Germany for Holocaust survivors immediately after the war. And so let's just look at this now, and then I'm going to tell you a story about it. This is a Maseches Yevamos of Tfus Minkin. This is the Minkin printing of Shas. There are very few of them in the world, and I managed to get my hands on one of them a number of years ago. And on the top of the front page of this Shas, you have a picture of Yerushalayim, presumably, and it says Mishibud Negeula Me'afela La'or Gadol, right? We were enslaved and went out to redemption. We were in darkness and we went out to great light. And it says it was printed in the American zone in Germany by the Vad Agudas Harabana, by the rabbinic council in charge of that area of Germany after World War II. Because as you know in history, that area was split up and under the jurisdiction of a number of countries. And on the bottom, there is a jarring picture of a wheelbarrow full of bodies of people that died in the Holocaust, and then Jews who are recovering the bodies and preparing them for Kvura. And here you have barracks, and you have a guard tower, and it says on the bottom a caption, Machane Avoda Be'Ashkenaz B'Yimei HaNatzim, a work camp, concentration camp in Germany in the days of the Nazis, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram. Okay? So this is a special Gemara, and here it says, and I would refer to this in a previous TFRP video, and I told you guys I would show it to you when I could, so I'm showing it to you now. And it says, Kimat kiluni ba'aretz, I was almost wiped out in the land, ve'ani loy azavti pikudecha, and nonetheless, I did not abandon your laws. And what an incredible pasuk. And you know who said that pasuk? Those are the words of David HaMelech in Sefer Tehillim, chapter Kuf Yud Tes, in Chaf and in Lamed, right? Because there's a whole Aleph Beis in that Tehillim. There are a number of incredible psukim describing how David HaMelech went through some of the worst suffering that a human being can go through, and he's proud of himself, saying, despite all the trauma and suffering and difficulty that I went through, I didn't stop learning Torah, I didn't abandon your halachas, and not only that, those were the things that helped me to thrive and get through the hardest of times. Okay? And I'm saying this for a reason, because before I continue with the tour of this Gemara, I know a lot of people on TFRP are people that went through a lot of trauma. They had their own personal sort of Holocaust. I'm fully aware of who I'm speaking to a lot of our members and what they went through in a lot of detail. And I'm trying to constantly convey certain messages in a safe way that I want all of our members to hear. Some people are so hurt and damaged from Torah and from Judaism that this has just become an incredible source of pain. But I want to be making a safe place here to entertain the idea that at some point when you're ready and you feel safe and you're able to, it is worthwhile seeing this idea, seeing how Torah somehow, learning Torah and keeping Torah, helped people who went through absolute hell in this world to survive and to thrive and to rebuild. I don't know if you all know my professional background, but one of the things I deal with is addiction, and the other one is disaster trauma. And those are the two areas of expertise, professional expertise, that I am a specialist and expert in. And you can learn more about that on my website, psychotraumaunit.com, and on my professional YouTube channel, which is Avi Tenenbaum PFA. Just put that in the search box of YouTube, subscribe, and you can check out my videos there, professional stuff. Now, when you work in a trauma setting after a major disaster, the first thing you do is you try to anticipate according to the nature of the disaster and the difficulty that people went through, what did they need? So let's take the Holocaust, for example. What do people need? The answer is everything, right? They have no family, they have no occupation, they probably have very poor physical health. Okay, so just to put them in a place with physicians and with food, and to try to connect them to loved ones from their town, family and friends that may have survived, this was all some of the most pressing needs in those days. People did not have clothing, people did not have money, transportation, they had nothing. They had less than nothing, and you know that. You know that, I don't need to explain it. One of the things you do when you are helping disaster survivors is you not only anticipate in your mind what they need, but you directly ask them. And so you go to a number of people and you do some sort of survey and say, what do you need right now in order to get to the next phase of your recovery? And you listen to what people tell you, and you understand the needs of the community, and you try to coordinate that for them. And what was very special, you need to really understand this, because I've been doing disaster work for a number of years. One of the amazing things is after the Holocaust, when women and children and men, old and young, were murdered and blown up and gassed and shot, and people were tortured and medical experiments, and people were displaced, and they had such complex trauma and torture, and it was absolute hell in this world, but it was probably worse than hell. And I don't need to begin to convince you of it. And if I need to convince you of it, you need to learn more about the Holocaust. And you know that it was the worst event that can possibly be imagined and contrived by human beings. And they went through all of that. And you know what they needed after the Holocaust? The people said, we need a Shas. We need a Gemara. So let's turn the page. This is a Maseches Yevamos of Tfus Minkin. I'm going to show you something really cool. Really cool. And I didn't even realize this till this morning. And that's Hashkacha Pratis. It was printed when? On Isru Chag of Sukkos, Tafshin Tes, which is today. Isru Chag of Sukkos. It was printed in 1948. Printed by manual offset by Druckerl Karl Winter, Heidelberg, Germany, under the supervision of Procurement Division, European Quartermaster Depot, United States Army. You're not going to find any Gemara in your life that says this stuff. Only this Gemara. Very special. On the top is a dedication to the United States Army, thanking them for helping to bring Ruchnius and this Gemara to the Jewish people after the war, because the American Army liberated and was responsible for rehabilitating the people in the TP camps until they were ready to go to other places. Here is a whole letter saying, Baruch Shechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'kiyanu l'zman hazeh. We printed a Shas after we were almost completely wiped out. I'm going to read you the English dedication, and then I'm going to tell you a story about this. It says, this edition of the Talmud is dedicated to the United States Army. This army played a major role in the rescue of the Jewish people from total annihilation, and after the defeat of Hitler, bore the major burden of sustaining the DPs of the Jewish faith. This special edition of the Talmud, published in the very land where just a short time ago everything Jewish and of Jewish inspiration was anathema, will remain a symbol of the indestructibility of the Torah. The Jewish TPs will never forget the generous impulses and the unprecedented humanitarianism of the American forces to whom they owe so much. In the name of the rabbinical organization, Rabbi Samuel Snaig, Chairman and Chief Rabbi of the U.S. Zone. Okay? From here, it is a pretty basic, regular Gemara, and I'm going to show you something now special in the Gemara. It doesn't look special unless you know the story behind it, and I'm going to tell that to you. Let me just get you the right page. If you go to the last page of this Gemara, and this is a Maseches Yevamos, so we're going to Daf Kuf Chaf Beis. Amud Beis. Here you have the Hadran. And for those not familiar, the Hadran is the prayer that you say after you finish learning a tractate of Shas. Yesterday, I had the schus, the merit of bringing this special, rare Gemara to the shul where I daven for Simchas Torah, and Rabbi Asher Weiss Shrita was there, and he finishes Shas every single year. One year he finishes the Bavli Shas, and the other year he finishes the Yerushalmi, and every single year, at the very end of Simchas Torah, going into Isru Chag, he makes a Siyum HaShas. Everybody can come, the tzibur is invited. And I asked him if he would be interested in saying the Hadron on all of Shas from this Gemara that was printed in Germany right after the Holocaust. And Baruch Hashem, he said the Hadron on this Gemara, and he read it right out of here, and the tears were uncontrollable. I couldn't hold myself back from crying away, and Rav Asher Weiss Shrita was crying, and it was so meaningful. And the idea that Torah plays a role in our mental health and in the continuity of the Jewish people and their resilience. And what I'm always trying to do in TFRP is create safe content where people who went through difficult things can hear in a place where they're understood and validated Torah ideas that are worth hearing, but they may not have been willing to hear if it wasn't somebody that went through difficult things or wasn't familiar in mental health issues. And so I want to share with you, David HaMelech, as we've been saying in the recent videos, he went through so much. And he said, Mulei sayrascha sha'ashuai az avadati ba'ani. And when I originally mentioned that in one of my videos, somebody who went through a lot said, Avi, how could you dare say that to people who went through a lot? But I work the other way. I work with, what does the Torah say? What's the truth? And then let's see how it applies to us. And we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to be worried. But let's first just see what the Torah says. And the Torah says that David HaMelech is teaching us a timeless lesson, that the Torah had an integral role in helping him get through his pain and suffering with the trauma and difficulties that he had. And he had a lot of difficulties. And now I'm showing you a Gemara, and I'm turning it back to the beginning so you can see it again. Maseches Yevamos. A Gemara from people who went through living hell in this world and more. And they said, we need a Gemara. In order to get out of this pain and suffering and complex trauma, we need a Maseches Yevamos. We need to start learning. Right? And that was part of their recovery. And if we don't include Hashem and spirituality and the things that we grew up with in our recovery, then we're missing something. But of course we understand that for some people, these things have been broken and shattered. The relationship that they have to Torah has been stolen from them by people that weren't good people, who did bad things to them, set bad examples. And we're trying to be one of the only channels in the world, Torah for Real People, where we address this. And so we understand that. But together with understanding and validating that, we still believe that Gemara has a very important role. Learning Torah, getting close to Hashem, understanding His will. There is nothing like the joy of Torah. Nunei sayrascha sha'ashuai. I looked in the Mefarshim on that pasuk. If you look in the Radak and other Mefarshim there, they say, literally, there's not much of a chiddush. It's in the words itself of the pasuk. It says, Nunei sayrascha sha'ashuai azavarati ba'ani. The word sha'ashuai is in the pasuk, which means, if I didn't have your Torah to enjoy, I would have gotten completely lost and drowned in my suffering. David HaMelech could have said, Nunei sayrascha azavarati ba'ani. Without your Torah, I would have gotten lost in my suffering. But he didn't say that. He said, Nunei sayrascha sha'ashuai azavarati ba'ani. Without the incredible, sublime, spiritual joy of learning your Torah, sitting by a shtender and learning a black Gemara, I would have been completely lost in my suffering. And so the Radak if I'm recalling correctly, and other Mefarshim simply point out that it's talking about the supreme joy of learning that a Jew gets from learning Torah, and the spiritual experience that one has that I spoke about in the previous video. And I told you a part of my story and very much difficulty that I had with Torah, and a bad relationship that I had with Torah, and how hard it came to me, and all sorts of things that I went through. And Torah is the greatest joy of my life. And just like it helped me, it's part of my recovery and my growth and my simchas achayim, and the way that I feel good about myself, that I sit and learn some Torah and learn some Gemara and I learn Jewish ideas and I use them to grow and to think on a higher order level of thinking, and I get wiser, and the more I learn, I feel more connected to the community and to the people around me, and I earn self-respect through learning this. And there are so many more benefits than just that. And then there's the metaphysical benefits of learning the Gemara, and of course you can go look that up in the Derech Hashem Chelik Daled. He talks about that there. And if you look at the Mesilas Yesharim in Perek Daled, if I'm not mistaken, the Ramchal describes in detail how it is only by learning Torah that we can overcome the Yetzer Hara, and we can improve our quality of life on a certain level that nothing else can quite achieve. Nothing. And I know a lot of people listening to these videos are not there yet. And I can understand you and validate you. We understand. Take your time. But when you are ready, come back to the Gemara. Try to discover, what were these Holocaust survivors looking for? What were they looking in a Maseches Yevamos? Why did they need this? Why was that important for their recovery from what they went through? Losing their wives, their husbands, their children, their work, their communities. I'll tell you one last thing, just because we're talking already about the Holocaust. If you want to understand the profound loss of the Holocaust, aside that you and your family may have very particular, unique stories that I don't know, I'll tell you just one experience I had that helped me relate to part of the Holocaust. I went to Poland twice. I mean, I went many times, but to see the actual camps, I went twice so far. And when I went to Auschwitz, to be honest with you, I didn't feel much. I felt it was very commercialized. I felt that it was very touristy. I felt like I was in Disney World. I'm being honest with you, because we only are honest here. But when I went to Treblinka, it was something else entirely. And if you've ever been to Treblinka, Treblinka is basically this big empty field with a monument in it. Because what happened was, the Nazis, Yimach Shemam B'Zichram, knew that the Allies were on the way to stop them, and so they tried to remove all traces of the camp. And so you have there today this big empty area, and you have these stones where each stone represents a community that was wiped out in the camp. And to me, that was more profound of a statement than the touristy Auschwitz. And that was just my personal feelings, just me. Doesn't have to be that that was like that for you. But the fact that there was complete desolation and nothingness, and then a bunch of rocks, and each rock had inscribed on it, if I'm recalling correctly, the name of a town that was completely wiped out in Treblinka. And you look at them and you say, wow, that was a neighborhood. There were shuls, there were organizations, there were businesses. There were older people, middle-aged people, young people, children. There were dreams. There was so much. There were yeshivas. There were newborns and new mothers and young couples. There were proud grandparents. There was so much. And now there's nothing. There's complete annihilation and desolation. And then we sang the song over there, with the people that I was with, Ani Ma'amin. If you know the story, I think it's a Mudjitzer Niggin of Ani Ma'amin from the Chazan of Mudjitz, that he was in the train and he was going on the way to Treblinka, and he says he was too old to risk jumping out of the train, and so he taught the Niggin to other people, and then they jumped out of the train and brought it back to North America, to Canada if I'm not mistaken, and the Niggin got to us today. Ani malamin, ani malamin. Right? I'm sure you know the niggun. If I got the facts wrong, forgive me. I'm not a historian. I'm speaking from my heart. I don't do major historical research every time I mention something, but I wanted to share that experience with you. The point is, guys, let's try to understand the profound role of why these Holocaust survivors needed this Gemara. Now we have the whole winter ahead of us, all the way till Hanukkah. No holidays. No holidays, guys. Just the Torah. And it's more than enough. Let's remake our relationship with Torah and start enjoying it. And be zocha to what David HaMelech said, Mulei seiroscha sha'ashuai, az avadati ba'ani. Without your Torah, giving me such pleasure and enjoyment and a sublime experience within the suffering that I'm in, removing me and uplifting me above the suffering, giving me a new perspective, giving me incredible things to think about during the suffering, when all that's going on in my mind is rumination and terrible pain and thoughts and judgment and anger and rejection and sadness. I have a Maseches Yevamos, we have a Maseches Ksubis, Sanhedrin, Bava Kama, Moed Katan, to uplift us and raise us above everything that's going on around us, and to take us a little bit out of this world, to rise above our sufferings, and to become the greatest people that we can become, just like we spoke about in the previous video. Wishing you a beautiful winter, guys.